Clara Hendricks fell to her knees in the snow, watching the last wagon disappear over the ridge. Her own sister hadn't even looked back. "Please," she whispered to no one. "Please." The wind swallowed her voice. The cold was already numbing her fingers, her feet, her will to stand. Then she heard it hoofbeats cutting through the howling wind. A man's voice, rough and commanding. "Get up! Now! You're coming with me!" If you want to know how Clara survived and what happened next, subscribe to our channel and watch until the end. Comment below with your city so I can see how far this story has traveled. The wagon had been gone for less than an hour, but Clara Hendricks already couldn't feel her feet. She stood in the same spot where her sister had pushed her off the wagon, her broken trunk scattered in the snow around her, her mother's quilt half buried in a drift. The Wyoming wind cut through her thin wool coat like it wasn't there at all. "Ruth!" she had screamed when the wagon started moving. "Ruth, wait!" Her sister hadn't even turned around. Clara's husband had been dead for 8 months. 8 months of depending on her sister's charity. 8 months of whispered conversations that stopped when she entered the room. 8 months of her brother-in-law's resentful glances across the supper table. And now this. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering so hard her teeth clicked together. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees since morning, and the sky had turned the color of a fresh bruise. A blizzard was coming. Everyone on the wagon train had known it. That's why they'd left her. "Think, Clara," she said out loud, her voice cracking. Think. But there was nothing to think about. She was 32 years old, alone in the Wyoming Territory, with no horse, no food, and a storm bearing down on her that would kill her before nightfall. She had maybe 2 hours, maybe less. Clara knelt in the snow and began gathering what she could salvage from her scattered belongings. Her fingers were already clumsy, already losing sensation. She found her mother's Bible, the pages fluttering in the wind. She found a tin of biscuits, crushed but still edible. She found the small pouch of coins she'd hidden in her petticoat, $12.30. Everything she had left in the world. What she didn't find was hope. "God," she whispered, pressing the Bible to her chest. "I know I haven't been much for praying since Thomas died. I know I've been angry. But please, please don't let me die like this. Not alone. Not thrown away like garbage." The wind howled its answer, and Clara bowed her head. That's when she heard the horse. At first she thought she'd imagined it, the rhythm of hoofbeats underneath the wind. But then it came again, closer, unmistakable. She lifted her head and saw a figure emerging from the swirling snow, a man on a dark horse moving toward her with purpose. Clara's heart lurched. A woman alone had everything to fear from a strange man in the wilderness. But she was going to die anyway. At least this would be faster than freezing. She didn't run. She couldn't have, even if she'd wanted to. The rider pulled his horse to a stop 10 feet from where she knelt. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy coat lined with fur and a hat pulled low against the wind. When he looked down at her, she saw eyes the color of worn leather, creased at the corners from years of squinting into sun and snow. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "What in God's name are you doing out here?" Clara tried to answer, but her jaw was shaking too hard to form words. The man swung down from his horse in one fluid motion, his boots crunching in the snow as he approached her. Up close, she could see the gray threading through his dark hair, the old scar running along his jaw, the way his eyes swept over her situation and understood it immediately. "Wagon train left you," he said. It wasn't a question. Clara managed a nod. "How long ago?" An hour. Maybe more. I don't..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Her whole body was shaking now, violent tremors that she couldn't control. The man's jaw tightened. Something flickered in those leather-brown eyes, anger, she thought, though not at her. "Can you stand?" "I don't know." He didn't wait for her to find out. He stepped forward, grasped her arms, and lifted her to her feet as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. Clara gasped at the contact, at the strength in his hands, at the sudden warmth of another human being after an hour of killing cold. "My things," she said weakly, gesturing at the scattered contents of her trunk. "Leave them." "But my mother's quilt, her Bible." "Ma'am." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "That storm's going to hit in less than an hour. If we're not under shelter by then, your mother's quilt won't matter because you'll be dead. You understand?" Clara looked into his face and saw that he meant every word. "Yes," she whispered. "Good." He released one of her arms and reached for something in his saddlebag. A moment later, he was wrapping a heavy wool blanket around her shoulders, pulling it tight across her chest. "Can you ride?" Yes, I think so." "Ever ridden astride?" Clara felt heat rise to her frozen cheeks despite the cold. "Certainly not." For the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across the man's weathered face. "You're about to learn. Come on." Before she could protest, he had lifted her onto his horse, settling her in the saddle with her skirts bunched awkwardly around her legs. Clara grabbed the saddle horn, mortified and grateful in equal measure. "Hold tight," the man said, swinging up behind her. His arms came around her to take the reins, creating a circle of warmth that Clara instinctively pressed back against. "We've got about 6 miles to cover, and not much time to do it." "Where are we going?" "My cabin." Clara stiffened. "Sir, I don't even know your name." "Callahan," he said, already urging the horse forward. "Samuel Callahan. And I don't much care if you trust me or not, ma'am, because the alternative is you dying in that snow back there. So you can come with me and live, or you can get off this horse and freeze. Your choice." Clara's hands tightened on the saddle horn. "I'll come with you," she said. Smart woman. They rode in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably less than one. The snow began to fall harder, thick flakes that stuck to Clara's eyelashes and melted on her cheeks. She was warmer now, pressed against Callahan's solid chest, but the cold had already sunk deep into her bones, and she couldn't stop shivering. "Talk to me," Callahan said suddenly, his voice close to her ear. "What? Talk. You're too quiet. People get quiet right before they slip away from the cold. So talk." Clara tried to think of something to say, but her mind felt sluggish, wrapped in fog. I don't know what to say." "Tell me your name." "Clara. Clara Hendricks." "Where you from, Clara Hendricks?" "Philadelphia. Originally." Her words were slurring slightly. She couldn't seem to help it. "Then Ohio. Then wherever my sister's husband decided to drag us." "The wagon train?" Callahan said. "They were your family." "My sister. Her husband. Their children." Clara laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "My own blood left me to die, Mr. Callahan. My own sister looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't worth the food I ate." Callahan was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was harder. "Some people don't deserve to call themselves family. Ruth was all I had left. Then you didn't have much." The bluntness of it should have hurt. Instead, Clara felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen solid for months, maybe years. "No," she agreed softly. "I suppose I didn't." The horse pressed on through the deepening snow, and Clara felt herself drifting, the edges of consciousness growing fuzzy and indistinct. "Hey!" Callahan's arm tightened around her waist. "Stay with me, Clara. We're almost there." "I'm tired." "I know, but you don't get to sleep yet. Tell me something else. Tell me about your husband." Clara's breath caught. "Thomas? That his name? Tell me about him." He was kind." The words came slowly, pulled from somewhere deep. "Not exciting, not romantic, but kind. He never raised his voice to me, never raised his hand. When I lost our babies, Her voice broke. When I lost them, he held me and told me it wasn't my fault, even though I knew he wanted children more than anything. How'd he die? Fever. 8 months ago. He got sick on a Tuesday and was gone by Sunday. Clara wiped at her eyes with numb fingers. I was married to him for 9 years, Mr. Callahan. 9 years. And in the end, his family wanted nothing to do with me. My family wanted nothing to do with me. I've got nothing left. Nothing and no one. You've got yourself. Clara laughed bitterly. And what's that worth? More than you think. Callahan's voice was quiet but certain. I've been alone in these mountains for 10 years, ma'am. I know something about what a person's worth when everything else is stripped away. And you're still talking, still fighting, still breathing. That means something. Clara wanted to argue, but she didn't have the strength. There, Callahan said, and Clara lifted her head to see a dark shape emerging from the swirling snow, a small cabin barely visible against the white, with a thin trail of smoke rising from the chimney. You left the fire burning. Always do in winter. Never know when you'll need to get warm fast. He guided the horse toward a small lean-to beside the cabin, dismounting quickly before reaching up for Clara. Come on, let's get you inside. Clara tried to swing her leg over the saddle, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Her limbs felt like they belonged to someone else, heavy and unresponsive. I can't, she said, panic rising in her voice. I can't move. Callahan didn't hesitate. He reached up, wrapped his arms around her waist, and pulled her down from the horse, catching her against his chest when her legs buckled. I've got you, he said. I've got you. He carried her to the cabin door, kicked it open with one booted foot, and brought her inside out of the killing cold. The warmth hit Clara like a physical blow so intense after the frozen wind that she cried out. Easy, Callahan said, setting her down in a chair near the fireplace. Easy. The warmth's going to hurt for a bit. That's normal. He was already moving, building up the fire, putting a kettle on to boil, pulling blankets from a chest in the corner. Clara watched him through blurring vision, her whole body starting to shake again as the warmth penetrated her frozen flesh. My feet, she gasped. They're burning. That's good. Means you're not going to lose them. Callahan knelt in front of her and reached for her boots. May I? Clara nodded, too desperate to worry about propriety. He removed her boots with surprising gentleness. Then her stockings hissing softly when he saw her feet, white and waxy, the toes tinged with blue. Frostbite, he said. Not bad yet, but it would have been if we'd been out there much longer. He began rubbing her feet between his rough hands, the friction sending waves of pain and relief through Clara's body. This is going to hurt. It already does. Going to hurt worse before it gets better. He was right. As sensation returned to her feet, Clara had to bite her lip to keep from crying out. The pain was extraordinary, like needles being driven into her flesh from the inside out. Keep breathing, Callahan said. Deep breaths. It'll pass. Clara focused on his voice, on the steady rhythm of his hands on her feet, on the crackle of the fire beside them. Slowly, gradually, the pain began to ease, replaced by a deep, throbbing ache. Better? Callahan asked. Yes. Clara looked down at him, this stranger who had saved her life, kneeling at her feet like a servant. Why? Why what? Why did you stop? Why did you help me? She shook her head. You don't know me. I'm nothing to you. Callahan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally looked up, there was something in his eyes that Clara couldn't quite read. Pain, maybe, or memory. Because I found someone once, he said slowly. Years ago. A woman alone in the snow just like you. By the time I reached her, she was already gone. Frozen solid with her hands stretched out like she was reaching for something. He released Clara's feet and stood turning toward the fire. I don't know who she was. Never found out. But I've never forgotten her face. Never forgotten that I was too late. Clara's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. Callahan's voice was gruff. Just don't make me find another one. Drink this. He pressed a tin cup into her hands, hot tea sweetened with honey, the steam rising into her face. Clara wrapped her fingers around it, letting the warmth seep into her bones. "Thank you," she said softly. "Mr. Callahan." Sam. Sam. She tested the name, found it fit. "Thank you, Sam." He nodded once, then turned away to tend to his horse. Clara sat by the fire sipping her tea, listening to the blizzard howl outside the cabin walls. She was alive. Against all odds, against everything her sister had intended, she was alive. And for the first time in 8 months, she thought that maybe, just maybe, that meant something. The storm raged for 3 days. Clara learned the rhythms of Sam Callahan's cabin during those 3 days, the way the fire needed feeding every 4 hours, the way the wind found cracks in the walls that had to be stuffed with rags, the way the small space could feel both suffocating and safe at the same time. She learned about Sam too, though he gave up information like a miser parting with coins. He was 38 years old. He'd been a soldier in the war, though he wouldn't say which battles he'd fought or what he'd seen. He'd had a wife once, Margaret, and they'd been expecting a child. Neither had survived the birth. "I'm sorry," Clara said when he told her the words, feeling inadequate. "It was a long time ago," Sam replied, but his eyes said otherwise. "Is that why you live out here alone?" Sam poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. "I live out here because I'm better at being alone than being with people. Always have been. War just made it worse." "But you saved me." "Doesn't mean I'm looking for company." He glanced at her, then away. "Soon as this storm breaks, I'll take you to Elk Creek, town about 20 miles east. They've got a boarding house, a church. Decent folks mostly. You can figure out your next steps from there." Clara nodded, ignoring the strange twist of disappointment in her chest. Of course he didn't want her here. Of course this was temporary. She was a stranger, an obligation, a problem to be solved and then forgotten. "That's very kind of you," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "It's not kind, it's practical." Sam set down the poker and stood. "You should rest. Storm's not letting up anytime soon." He retreated to his corner of the cabin, and Clara lay down on the pallet he'd made for her near the fire, pulling the blankets up to her chin. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind scream outside, and tried not to think about how alone she was going to feel when she reached Elk Creek. On the second night, Clara woke to the sound of Sam crying out. She sat up, heart pounding, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. But there was no intruder, no danger, only Sam thrashing in his bedroll across the cabin, caught in the grip of some nightmare. "No," he was saying, his voice ragged. "No, Margaret, hold on. Just hold on." Clara hesitated. He had been so careful to keep his distance, to maintain the boundaries between them. Would he want her to see him like this? Would he want her help? Another cry tore from his throat, raw with grief, and Clara made her decision. She crossed the cabin and knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Sam. Sam, wake up." He came awake all at once, his hand shooting out to grab her wrist with bruising force. His eyes were wild, unseeing, and for a terrifying moment, Clara thought he might hurt her. Then, recognition flooded his face, and he released her like she was made of fire. "Clara." His voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's all right." She rubbed her wrist, hiding the ache. "You were having a nightmare." "I know." He sat up, running his hands through his hair. In the dim glow of the dying fire, he looked younger somehow, and infinitely more vulnerable. "I'm sorry if I woke you." "You didn't." A lie, but a kind one. Clara sat back on her heels, giving him space. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." The word was immediate, reflexive, a door slamming shut. Clara nodded and started to rise. "It was the night she died." His voice stopped her cold. "Margaret." Sam continued staring at the fire rather than at her. "The night she died. The baby came too early and something was wrong. There was so much blood. She kept asking me to help her, kept saying my name, and I couldn't do anything. I just held her hand and watched her slip away." Clara sank back down, her heart aching. "The baby lived for 3 hours after," Sam said. "A little girl. She never even opened her eyes. I buried them both behind the cabin we were building. And then I came out here as far from other people as I could get because I couldn't—" His voice cracked. "I couldn't stand the thought of ever feeling that helpless again." "Sam," Clara whispered, "I know it's been 10 years. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I know I should have moved on by now, but some things don't heal. Some things just become part of who you are." Clara reached out and took his hand. He stiffened at the contact but didn't pull away. "I lost 2 babies," she said quietly, "before they were ever born. The first time I bled for 3 days. Thomas thought I was going to die. The second time was worse because I let myself hope." She squeezed his hand. "I understand, Sam. I understand what it's like to carry that weight." They sat in silence for a long moment. Hands clasped the fire crackling beside them. "You should go back to sleep," Sam finally said. But he didn't let go of her hand. "So should you." "I don't sleep much. Not anymore." Clara made a decision then, one that would have scandalized her mother and horrified her sister. "Then don't sleep," she said. "Talk to me instead." So they talked. Through the darkest hours of the night, with the storm raging outside and the fire burning low, they told each other the stories they'd never told anyone else. Sam talked about the war, about friends he'd lost, and things he'd done that still haunted him. Clara talked about her marriage, about the slow erosion of her sister's affection, about the moment she'd realized that Ruth had always resented her. When dawn finally crept through the cracks in the shutters, they were both exhausted, wrung out, emptied of secrets. But something had changed between them. Clara saw it in the way Sam looked at her now, not as an obligation, but as something else. Something he didn't have a name for yet. And she felt it in herself too, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire, a connection that went deeper than gratitude. "Storm's letting up," Sam said, breaking the spell. "Might be able to head for Elk Creek tomorrow." "Yes," Clara agreed. "I suppose so." But neither of them moved, and neither of them looked away. On the morning of the 4th day, the storm finally broke. Clara woke to silence, the absence of wind, the absence of the constant howl that had become background noise. She sat up, blinking in the thin light that filtered through the cabin's single window. Sam was already awake, standing by the door, looking out at the transformed world. "Snow's deep," he said without turning around. "But the sky's clear. We can make Elk Creek by nightfall if we leave soon." Clara's stomach tightened. "I see." Sam turned then, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He looked uncertain, almost vulnerable, so different from the gruff, distant man who had found her in the snow 4 days ago. "Clara," he said, then stopped as if he didn't know how to continue. "Yes, I was thinking." He took a step toward her, then stopped again. "About Elk Creek. About what happens when we get there." "What about it?" Sam's jaw worked. He was clearly struggling with something, some internal battle that Clara couldn't see. "I've been alone a long time," he finally said. "I thought I wanted it that way. I thought I was better off without—" He gestured vaguely. "Without complications. And now I'm not so sure." Clara's heart was pounding. "What are you saying, Sam?" He crossed the remaining distance between them, stopping just close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at his face. "I'm saying that these past few days have been the most I've talked in 10 years. The most I've felt in 10 years. His voice dropped lower. "I'm saying that the thought of taking you to Elk Creek and riding away feels wrong in a way I can't explain." "Then don't." The words were out before Clara could stop them. Sam's eyes widened. "What?" Clara took a breath, gathering her courage. "Don't ride away. Don't leave me at the boarding house and disappear back into these mountains. Stay." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers trembling against his rough jaw. "I know it's sudden. I know we barely know each other, but I've spent my whole life being careful, being proper, waiting for permission to live. And where did it get me abandoned in a snowstorm by the only family I had left? Clara. You saved my life, Sam Callahan. But more than that, you reminded me what it felt like to be seen, to be heard. Her voice cracked. Please don't make me go back to being invisible again. Sam stared at her for a long, breathless moment. Then he lowered his head and kissed her. The kiss was brief, almost tentative, as if Sam was afraid she might shatter beneath his touch. When he pulled back, his eyes searched her face with something close to wonder. I shouldn't have done that, he said, his voice rough. Why not? Because I don't have anything to offer you, Clara. I live in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. I trap animals for a living. I wake up screaming from nightmares more nights than not. He stepped back, putting distance between them. You deserve better than that. Clara felt the cold rush in where his warmth had been. Don't I get to decide what I deserve? You don't know what you're asking for. Then tell me. She stepped toward him, refusing to let him retreat. Tell me what I'm asking for, Sam Callahan. Because from where I'm standing, I'm asking for a man who risked his life to save a stranger. A man who stayed up all night talking to me because he knew I was scared. A man who can't give you a future, Sam's voice cracked. I buried that ability 10 years ago, Clara, along with my wife and daughter. Clara's heart ached at the raw pain in his words, but she didn't back down. I'm not asking for forever, she said quietly. I'm asking for a chance, for both of us. Sam stood frozen, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. The battle playing out behind his eyes was almost painful to watch. We should go, he finally said. The snow's not getting any shallower. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Clara nodded and began gathering her few belongings, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She had laid herself bare, and Sam had neither accepted nor rejected her. She didn't know which would have been easier to bear. They rode in silence for the first hour, Clara seated in front of Sam on his horse, his arms around her to hold the reins. The intimacy of the position felt different now, charged with everything that had been said and unsaid between them. The snow was deep, sometimes reaching the horse's chest, and their progress was slow. Sam guided the animal with practiced ease, finding paths through drifts and around obstacles that Clara never would have seen. There's something I need to tell you, Sam said, suddenly breaking the long silence. Clara's stomach tightened. What is it? About Elk Creek. About why I said I'd take you there. I assumed it was the nearest town. It is. Sam paused, and Clara felt his chest rise and fall against her back. But there's another reason. The sheriff there, a man named Tom Brody. He was in my unit during the war. We fought together at Antietam at Gettysburg. He's one of the few people in this world I'd trust with my life. You're taking me to him. I'm taking you to someone who can help you if I can't. Sam's voice was heavy. I don't know what's waiting for us in that town, Clara. I don't know if your sister sent word ahead or if there's anyone looking for you. But Tom's a good man. Whatever happens, he'll see you're treated fair. Clara turned her head slightly, trying to see his face. You think Ruth might have told people I'm dead? I think a woman who'd leave her own sister to freeze wouldn't hesitate to tell whatever lie served her best. The thought hadn't occurred to Clara until that moment. But now that Sam had said it, she couldn't shake it loose. If Ruth had told people Clara died in the storm, then Clara's arrival in Elk Creek would be... what? A miracle, a scandal, a threat to whatever story Ruth had constructed. I don't care what she told people, Clara said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. I'm alive, and I'm done letting Ruth decide what happens to me. Sam's arm tightened briefly around her waist. That's the spirit. They stopped to rest the horse at midday, sharing dried venison and hard biscuits from Sam's pack. The sun was bright on the snow, almost blindingly so, and Clara had to squint to see Sam's face as they ate. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Depends on what it is." "The woman you told me about. The one you found frozen in the snow years ago." Clara watched his expression carefully. "Did you ever find out who she was?" Sam's jaw tightened. "No. I buried her where I found her. Said a prayer over the grave best I could, but I never knew her name." "That must haunt you." "Everything haunts me, Clara." He looked at her, then his brown eyes unguarded for once. "That's why I live alone. Fewer ghosts to add to the collection." "Maybe ghosts aren't the only things worth collecting." Sam held her gaze for a long moment. "Maybe not." They mounted up again and continued east. As the afternoon wore on, Clara began to see signs of civilization. Distant smoke from chimneys, fence posts poking up through the snow, the occasional track of another horse or wagon. "Getting close," Sam said. "Another hour, maybe 2. Clara's nerves began to flutter. What would she find in Elk Creek? What kind of reception awaited a woman who arrived in the dead of winter, escorted by a mountain man with nothing but the clothes on her back? "Sam." "Yeah. Whatever happens in town. Whatever people say or think." She took a breath. "I want you to know that I'm grateful. For everything." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't met the townsfolk." "I'm not thanking you for them. I'm thanking you for you." Sam was quiet for so long that Clara thought he wasn't going to respond. Then so softly she almost missed it, he said, "You're welcome." Elk Creek was larger than Clara had expected. The main street was lined with wooden buildings, their facades dusted with snow, but showing signs of recent activity. Smoke rose from a dozen chimneys, and people moved along the wooden sidewalks, bundled against the cold, but going about their business with purpose. As Sam guided his horse down the main street, heads began to turn. Clara felt the weight of curious stares, heard the murmur of voices as they passed. "That's Sam Callahan," someone said loud enough for her to hear. "Ain't seen him in town for months." "Who's the woman with him?" "Dunno. Never seen her before." Sam seemed oblivious to the attention, or at least indifferent to it. He guided the horse toward a building with a sign that read "Sheriff's Office," and dismounted, then helped Clara down. "Stay close," he said quietly. "Let me do the talking at first." Clara nodded, suddenly aware of how she must look. Her dress wrinkled and stained, her hair escaping from its braid, her face wind-burned and chapped. Not exactly the picture of respectability. Sam pushed open the door to the sheriff's office and stepped inside Clara close behind him. The interior was warm, heated by a pot-bellied stove in the corner, and cluttered with wanted posters and stacks of paper. Behind the desk sat a man about Sam's age with graying hair and a thick mustache. He looked up at their entrance, and his eyes widened in recognition. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, rising from his chair. "Sam Callahan. I thought you'd gone and got yourself killed up in those mountains." "Not yet, Tom." Sam extended his hand, and the two men shook warmly, though not for lack of trying on the weather's part. "Who's your friend?" Sam stepped aside, revealing Clara. "This is Clara Hendricks. I found her 4 days ago abandoned in the snow by a wagon train. She needs help." Sheriff Brody's eyes narrowed as he studied Clara. "Abandoned by who?" "Her sister. Pushed her off the wagon and left her to die." The sheriff let out a low whistle. "That's cold. Colder than the weather." He gestured to a chair near the stove. "Sit down, ma'am. Warm yourself up. Tell me what happened." Clara sat grateful for the warmth and the chance to rest. She told her story from the beginning, from Thomas's death, to her sister's growing hostility, to the moment Ruth had looked her in the eye and said she wasn't worth the food she ate. Sheriff Brody listened without interrupting his expression, growing darker as the tale went on. "And you don't know where the wagon train was headed?" he asked when she finished. "California. That's all I know." "Likely out of my jurisdiction by now, then." The sheriff sighed. "Even if I could find them, abandonment's a hard charge to prove. Your sister would just say you wandered off, got lost." I don't want to press charges, Clara said, surprising herself. I just want to start over. Is that possible here? Sheriff Brody exchanged a glance with Sam. Depends. You got any skills? Any money? I can read and write. I can do figures. I kept the books for my husband's farm for 9 years. Clara straightened her spine. And I have $12 to my name. That won't last long. Then I'll find work. The sheriff studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. There's a boarding house on Oak Street. Mrs. Agnes McAllister runs it, strict but fair. Widows and single ladies only. She might have a room available. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Agnes is particular about who she takes in. Sheriff Brody looked at Sam. You vouching for her? Sam met Clara's eyes, and something passed between them. Something unspoken but powerful. Yeah, he said. I'm vouching for her. All right then. The sheriff stood and reached for his coat. I'll take you to Agnes myself. Sam, you coming? No. Sam's voice was flat. I've got business to attend to. Clara felt a sharp pang of disappointment. After everything they'd shared, he was going to just walk away. Sam, she started. I'll be around, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. Just need to take care of some things first. Before Clara could respond, he was out the door, leaving her alone with the sheriff and a heart full of questions. Mrs. Agnes McAllister was exactly as Clara had imagined, a thin, sharp-featured woman in her late 50s with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. So, she said, after Sheriff Brody made introductions and left. You're the woman Sam Callahan pulled out of the snow. Yes, ma'am. And your own sister left you to die. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. McAllister's lips pressed into a thin line. Sit down, child. I'll make tea. Clara sat at the kitchen table while the older woman bustled about filling a kettle and setting out cups with practiced efficiency. The kitchen was spotless, every surface scrubbed clean, every item in its proper place. I was married for 32 years, Mrs. McAllister said without preamble. My husband was a good man for the first 15. Then he discovered whiskey, and he wasn't so good anymore. Clara wasn't sure how to respond to this revelation. I'm sorry. Don't be. He's dead now, and I'm not. Mrs. McAllister set a cup of tea in front of Clara and sat across from her. I tell you this because I want you to understand something. I don't take in just anyone. I take in women who've been through the fire, women who've earned their survival. You understand? Yes, ma'am, I think I do. Good. Mrs. McAllister sipped her tea, studying Clara over the rim of her cup. Room and board is $4 a week. Breakfast at 6, dinner at noon if you're here for it, supper at 6 sharp. No male visitors above the parlor floor. No exceptions. I understand. You'll also help with household chores. Cooking, cleaning, mending. Everyone contributes. I'm happy to work. Mrs. McAllister set down her cup. Sam Callahan vouched for you. That man doesn't vouch for anyone. Not in all the years I've known him. Clara's heart stuttered. How long have you known him? Since he came to these parts about 8 years ago. He brought furs to trade every few months, bought supplies, then disappeared back into the mountains. Never said more than a dozen words at a time. Mrs. McAllister's sharp eyes softened slightly. Lost his wife, I heard, and a baby. That kind of loss changes a man. Yes, Clara said quietly. It does. You've got losses of your own. I can see it in your eyes. Mrs. McAllister stood. Come, I'll show you to your room. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out onto the street below. Clara set down her meager belongings and felt something loosen in her chest. A room of her own, a place to sleep without fear of being thrown out into the cold. Supper's in 2 hours, Mrs. McAllister said from the doorway. There's water for washing. Make yourself presentable. Yes, ma'am, thank you. After the older woman left, Clara sank onto the bed and let herself breathe for the first time in what felt like days. She was safe. She was warm. She had a roof over her head and a chance to start over. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Sam. Why had he left so abruptly? Where had he gone? Would she ever see him again? She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she'd known him for less than a week, that whatever connection they'd felt was born of crisis and proximity, nothing more. But her heart wasn't listening. Clara washed and changed into her one other dress, a faded blue calico that had seen better days but was at least clean. She braided her hair and pinched color into her pale cheeks, then made her way downstairs for supper. The dining room held a table that could seat 8, though only 3 other women were present. They looked up as Clara entered, curiosity and wariness mixing in their expressions. "Ladies, Mrs. McAllister said, this is Clara Hendricks. She'll be staying with us." The introductions that followed were brief but cordial. There was Mary Sullivan, a young widow barely out of her teens with sad eyes and a nervous manner. There was Dorothy Chen, a woman about Clara's age of mixed heritage and a quiet dignity that Clara immediately respected. And there was Old Bess, as she insisted on being called, who was at least 70 and seemed to find everything either amusing or beneath her notice. "Heard you came in with Sam Callahan," Old Bess said as they ate. "That true?" "Yes, ma'am." Old Bess stabbed at her potato. "Man's a mystery. Been trying to crack him for years. Never could." "Leave the girl alone, Bess," Mrs. McAllister said. "She's been through enough without your interrogation." "I'm just making conversation." Old Bess winked at Clara. "Don't mind me, child. I'm too old to care what anyone thinks." Clara found herself smiling despite everything. I appreciate the honesty. After supper, Clara helped with the dishes alongside Dorothy, who proved to be a woman of few words but warm gestures. A gentle touch on the arm, a small smile, a careful passing of plates. "It gets easier," Dorothy said quietly as they worked. "What does starting over? Being somewhere no one knows your story." Dorothy handed Clara a dish to dry. "I came here 3 years ago from San Francisco. People said I didn't belong here, said I wasn't welcome. Mrs. McAllister took me in anyway. I'm glad she did." Dorothy's smile was small but genuine. "So am I." That night, Clara lay in her narrow bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had brought her to this moment. The husband she'd loved and lost. The sister who'd betrayed her. The stranger who'd saved her life and then disappeared without explanation. She thought about Sam's kiss, brief and hesitant, but full of longing. She thought about his words, "I don't have anything to offer you." But he did. He had offered her his honesty, his vulnerability, his protection. He had offered her glimpses of a man who had built walls around his heart, but was slowly, painfully allowing her to see behind them. And then he'd walked away. Clara turned on her side, pulling the blanket tight around her shoulders. Tomorrow, she would start her new life. Tomorrow, she would look for work, establish herself, prove to Elk Creek that she was worth something. But tonight, she would allow herself to feel the loss of a man she'd only just begun to know. 3 days passed with no sign of Sam. Clara threw herself into the routines of the boarding house, helping Mrs. McAllister with cooking and cleaning, learning the rhythms of life in Elk Creek. She discovered that the general store was run by a gruff but fair-minded man named Henry Porter, that the church held services every Sunday with a traveling minister who came through once a month, and that the town was desperate for a schoolteacher. "You say you can read and write?" Mayor Wilson asked, when Clara presented herself at his office, having heard about the need from Henry Porter. "And do figures?" "Yes, sir. I kept books for my husband's farm for 9 years, and my father was a professor in Philadelphia. He taught me Latin, mathematics, literature." Mayor Wilson's eyebrows rose. "A professor's daughter out here in Wyoming. How'd that happen?" "Life has a way of taking us places we never expected, sir." The mayor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I like you, Mrs. Hendricks. You've got spine. We need that out here." He shuffled some papers on his desk. The schoolhouse won't be finished until spring. But there are 12 children in town who need learning. If you're willing to hold classes in the church basement, I can offer you $20 a month." Clara's heart leaped. "I'll take it." "Good. You can start Monday." Clara left the mayor's office feeling lighter than she had in months. A job. A purpose. A reason to get up in the morning beyond mere survival. She was walking back to the boarding house mentally planning her first lessons when she saw him. Sam was standing outside the general store deep in conversation with Sheriff Brody. He looked different, cleaner than she'd seen him, his hair trimmed and his beard neatened. He wore new clothes, a proper coat, and boots that weren't held together with hope and habit. Clara's feet stopped moving of their own accord. As if sensing her gaze, Sam looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded street, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Sam said something to the sheriff and started walking toward her. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. 3 days of silence, and now he was coming to her. What would he say? What could she say? Clara. His voice was rough, uncertain. "I heard you got the teaching position." News travels fast in a small town. "Yeah, it does." They stood there, the awkwardness between them almost palpable. Clara wanted to demand answers, wanted to know why he'd left, why he'd stayed away. But pride kept the questions locked behind her teeth. "You look well," Sam said finally. "Rested." "Mrs. McAllister runs a good house." "She does." He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "I should have come sooner. I meant to. You just what?" Sam's jaw tightened. "I needed time to think." "About what?" "About you. About what happened in the cabin." He met her eyes, and Clara saw the struggle there, the war between wanting and fearing. "I haven't felt anything for anyone in 10 years, Clara. And then you showed up and everything I thought I knew about myself." He trailed off, shaking his head. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers, Sam." Clara stepped closer, lowering her voice so the passing townspeople wouldn't hear. "I'm just asking you not to run away." "I'm not running. I'm here, aren't I?" "Are you?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Sam reached out and took her hand. His fingers were rough and warm, curling around hers with a gentleness that made her throat tight. "I'm here," he said quietly. "And I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you want me to." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. "I don't want you to." "Then I won't." It wasn't a declaration of love, it wasn't a promise of forever, but it was enough. For now, it was enough. "Can I walk you back to the boarding house?" Sam asked. "Yes, I'd like that." They walked side by side through the snow-dusted streets of Elk Creek, and Clara felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Hope. That night after supper, Sam came to the boarding house as promised. Mrs. McAllister showed him into the parlor where Clara was waiting, and then positioned herself in the hallway, with her mending close enough to chaperone, but far enough to give them privacy. "She doesn't trust me," Sam said with a wry smile. "She doesn't trust anyone. It's nothing personal." They sat across from each other, the proper distance between them that society demanded. But their eyes kept meeting, and every glance felt charged with meaning. "I went to see my cabin," Sam said. "After I left you at the sheriff's office. I needed to look at it with fresh eyes, to figure out if it could be something more than just a place to hide." "And what did you decide?" Sam leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I decided it's just a building, 4 walls and a roof. It's not a home. It hasn't been a home since Margaret died." "I'm sorry, Sam." "Don't be." He looked at her, and his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. "For the first time in 10 years, I think I might want it to be a home again. I think I might be ready." Clara's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've been dead inside for a long time, Clara. And then you came along, frozen half to death, and something woke up." He reached across the space between them and took her hand. "I'm not good at this. I don't know how to court a woman properly. I don't know how to be what you deserve, but I want to try, if you'll let me." Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Sam, I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other, but I know how I felt when I thought I might lose you in that storm. I know how I felt when I kissed you, and I know I don't want to go back to being alone." "Neither do I." They sat there, hands clasped, the fire crackling in the hearth, and Mrs. McAllister's shadow visible in the hallway. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't private, but it was real. And for Clara, that was worth more than all the grand gestures in the world. "I should let you rest," Sam said finally, though he made no move to release her hand. "Big day tomorrow, first day of teaching. Will you come to the church, to see how it goes?" Sam's smile was slow, but genuine. Wouldn't miss it. He stood to leave, and Clara walked him to the door. Mrs. McAllister watched from her post in the hallway, sharp eyes missing nothing. "Good night, Clara," Sam said. "Good night, Sam." He reached out and touched her cheek just briefly, just a brush of rough fingers against soft skin. Then he was gone, disappearing into the dark Wyoming night. Clara closed the door and leaned against it, her heart full. "He's a good man," Mrs. McAllister said, appearing beside her. "Damaged, but good." "I know. Be careful with him. Men like that break easy." Clara nodded. "I will." She went upstairs to her room, but she didn't sleep for a long time. She lay in the dark, thinking about tomorrow, thinking about Sam, thinking about all the ways her life had changed in just 1 week. She had been abandoned by her own blood, left to die in a frozen wasteland. And instead of death, she had found life. She had found purpose. She had found, against all odds, the beginning of something that felt like love. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. It was more than she had ever dared to hope for. And she was just getting started. Monday morning came cold and bright. Clara dressed in her best dress, the blue calico that Sam had said matched her eyes, and walked to the church with her heart pounding and her hands full of borrowed books. 12 children waited for her in the basement, their ages ranging from 6 to 15, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Clara stood before them, took a deep breath, and began. "Good morning. My name is Mrs. Hendricks, and I'm going to be your teacher." "Where'd you come from?" a boy in the front row demanded. "We never seen you before." "I came from Philadelphia by way of Ohio, by way of the worst blizzard this territory has seen in 20 years. Clara smiled. "It's been quite a journey." The children exchanged glances, intrigued despite themselves. "Now," Clara continued, "I know some of you can read and some of you can't. I know some of you think school is a waste of time, so let me tell you something." She leaned forward, meeting their eyes one by one. "Everything I have, everything I am, I owe to education. When I had nothing else, when everyone had given up on me, I still had my mind. No one can take that away from you. No one can abandon you if you know how to think." The room was silent. "So," Clara straightened up. "Who wants to learn?" By the end of the day, Clara was exhausted, but exhilarated. Teaching was harder than she'd expected, but also more rewarding. Watching understanding dawn on a child's face, seeing them grasp a concept, for the first time it was like watching a small miracle. She was gathering her books when a shadow fell across the doorway. Sam stood there, snow dusting his shoulders, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked. "Long enough." He stepped into the room, picking up a slate that had fallen to the floor. "You're good at this." "I don't know about that." "I do. I watched. Those kids were hanging on your every word by the end." Sam set the slate on a desk and turned to face her. "You found your calling, Clara." "Maybe," she smiled. "Or maybe my calling found me." Sam crossed the room and stood before her close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "I've been thinking," he said. "About what?" "About the future." About what kind of life I want to build. He reached into his pocket and withdrew something small, something that glinted in the dim light. About whether I'm brave enough to ask for what I want. Clara's heart stopped. Sam, I know it's too soon. He said the words tumbling out in a rush. I know we've only known each other for a week. I know I'm damaged and difficult, and probably not what you dreamed of when you imagined your future. Sam. But I also know that I've felt more alive in the past week than I have in 10 years. I know that when I think about tomorrow for the first time, I actually want to see it. And I know that's because of you. He opened his hand, and Clara saw a ring simple gold band with a small stone that caught the light. It was Margaret's, he said quietly. The only thing I kept. I've been carrying it around for 10 years and I never knew why. Now I think maybe I was waiting. For something. For someone. He looked at her, his eyes vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. For you. Te. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare at the ring in his outstretched hand. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Sam continued. I'm not asking for anything except a chance. A chance to court you properly. A chance to prove I can be the man you deserve. A chance to... Clara silenced him with a kiss. It wasn't like the first time, hesitant and uncertain. This kiss was a declaration, a promise, a yes, to every question he hadn't quite asked. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. Is that a yes? He asked. That's a yes, Clara whispered. To all of it. Sam slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. They stood there in the empty church basement, two broken people who had somehow found each other in the middle of a frozen wilderness. Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft and silent. Inside, something new was beginning, something that felt like the start of forever. Word spread through Elk Creek like wildfire on dry grass. By the next morning, everyone in town knew that Sam Callahan had given Clara Hendricks a ring. By noon, opinions had divided sharply, some folks offering congratulations, others whispering behind their hands about the impropriety of it all. A week, Clara heard Mrs. Patterson say to her husband outside the general store. She's known him a week and already she's wearing his dead wife's ring. What kind of woman does that? Clara kept walking, her chin held high, but the words stung more than she wanted to admit. Mrs. McAllister was waiting for her when she returned to the boarding house, arms crossed, an expression unreadable. Sit down, the older woman said. Clara sat. I've heard the talk, Mrs. McAllister began. Half the town thinks you're a fortune hunter who seduced a grieving man. The other half thinks Sam's lost his mind. And what do you think, Mrs. McAllister studied her for a long moment. I think you're two broken people trying to put each other back together. Whether that's foolish or brave, I haven't decided yet. I love him. The words came out before Clara could stop them. I know it doesn't make sense. I know it's too fast. But I love him. Love doesn't pay the bills, child. Love doesn't stop tongues from wagging. Love doesn't protect you when the whole town decides you're not worth respecting. Then what does? Mrs. McAllister's expression softened just slightly. Time. Patience. Proving them wrong day after day until they run out of reasons to doubt you. Clara nodded slowly. I can do that. Can you? Because it won't be easy. People in small towns have long memories and short charity. They'll be watching every move you make, waiting for you to fail. Let them watch. Clara stood squaring her shoulders. I've survived worse than gossip. For the first time, Mrs. McAllister smiled. Yes, I believe you have. The weeks that followed tested Clara's resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. She taught her classes, ignoring the pointed looks from mothers who came to collect their children. She shopped at the general store, pretending not to hear the conversations that stopped when she entered. She walked through town with her head held high, even when it felt like every eye was judging her. Sam was her anchor through it all. He came to the boarding house every evening, sitting with her in the parlor under Mrs. McAllister's watchful eye. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories from their pasts, dreams for their futures, fears they'd never spoken aloud to anyone else. "Does it bother you?" Clara asked one night. "What people are saying?" Sam's jaw tightened. "What bothers me is that they're saying it about you. I'm used to being the town hermit. They've been talking about me for years, but you don't deserve their judgment. Neither do you. I'm a man. It's different for men. That's not fair." "No." Sam took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "It's not, but it's the way things are. Maybe it's time things changed." Sam looked at her, something warm flickering in his eyes. "Maybe you're the one to change them." 3 weeks after Sam gave her the ring, Clara was teaching her afternoon class when the church door banged open. A woman stood in the doorway, travel-worn and furious, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Clara. "There you are," the woman said. "I knew you weren't dead." Clara's blood turned to ice. Ruth. The children fell silent, sensing the tension that had suddenly filled the room. Clara set down her chalk with hands that trembled only slightly. "Class dismissed," she said, her voice remarkably steady. "We'll continue tomorrow." The children filed out, casting curious glances at the stranger as they passed. Ruth didn't move from the doorway until the last child had gone. "How did you find me?" Clara asked. "You think word doesn't travel, a woman matching your description showing up in Elk Creek with that mountain man taking a teaching position?" Ruth laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I knew it was you the moment I heard. So you came all this way to what? Make sure I was really alive." "I came to bring you back." Clara stared at her sister. "Back? Back to what? The wagon train that left me to die." "Don't be dramatic. We didn't leave you to die. You pushed me off the wagon, Ruth. You looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't worth the food I ate. Then you drove away and left me in a blizzard." Ruth's expression flickered, something that might have been guilt passing across her features before hardening again. "That was Harold's decision, not mine." "You didn't stop him." "What was I supposed to do? He's my husband. I have to obey him." "No." Clara's voice was quiet but firm. "You chose to obey him. There's a difference." Ruth stepped further into the room, her eyes taking in Clara's simple dress, the ring on her finger, the chalk dust on her hands. "Look at you, playing schoolteacher in some backwater town, wearing another woman's ring like you have any right to it." "I have every right to it. Sam gave it to me." "Sam." Ruth sneered the name. "The mountain man. The hermit who talks to no one and lives like an animal in the wilderness. That's who you've chosen. That's the grand future you left everything for." "I didn't leave anything, Ruth. You took everything from me. I gave you a home when no one else would. And you never let me forget it, not for one single day." The sisters faced each other across the empty classroom, years of resentment and hurt hanging in the air between them. "Why are you really here?" Clara asked finally. "It's not to bring me back. You don't want me back. You never did." Ruth's composure cracked just slightly. "Harold's dead." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. "What?" "3 weeks after we left you, fever took him, took 2 of the children too." Ruth's voice was flat, emotionless, but her hands were shaking. "Jenny and the baby, gone in the same week." Clara felt the room spin around her. Jenny, her bright-eyed niece, who used to beg for stories. The baby, barely 6 months old, with his father's dark hair and his mother's stubborn chin. "Ruth," she breathed. "I'm so sorry." "Are you?" Ruth's eyes were hard. "Are you sorry, Clara, because you should be? If you'd been there, if you'd helped with the nursing like you were supposed to, maybe they would have lived." "That's not fair." "Nothing's fair. Ruth's voice rose to a shriek. Nothing about any of this is fair. I did everything right. I obeyed my husband. I followed the rules. And what did it get me? A dead husband, dead children, and a sister who's living happily ever after while my world falls apart. Clara stood frozen, torn between compassion and anger, between the sister she remembered and the woman who had left her to die. I didn't ask for any of this, she said quietly. I didn't ask to be abandoned. I didn't ask to nearly freeze to death. And I certainly didn't wish harm on your family. But you benefited from it, didn't you? While I was burying my babies, you were falling in love. While I was watching my husband die, you were finding your happiness. Ruth's laugh was bitter. God has a sick sense of humor. God didn't do this, Ruth. You did. You made choices, and those choices had consequences, for both of us. So this is my punishment. Losing everything, while you gain everything. This isn't about punishment. It's about life. Life isn't fair. It doesn't keep score. It just happens, and we have to survive it however we can. Ruth stared at her, something shifting in her expression. When did you become so hard? When my own sister left me to die. They stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything between them pressing down like a physical force. What do you want, Ruth? Clara asked finally. Really? What did you come here for? Ruth's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of her. I don't know. I thought if I found you, if I made things right. Made things right how? By dragging me back to California. By pretending none of this happened. By apologizing. The word came out as barely a whisper. I came to apologize, Clara. For everything. Clara felt something crack inside her chest. It's too late for that. I know. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I know it is, but I had to try. I had to tell you that I'm sorry. That I've been sorry every day since we left you. That I wake up every night seeing your face as the wagon pulled away. Then why didn't you come back? Why didn't you stop? Harold make him turn around. Because I was afraid. The admission seemed to cost Ruth everything she had left. I was afraid of him, afraid of being alone, afraid of what would happen if I stood up to him. She wiped at her eyes. I've been afraid my whole life, Clara. Afraid of everything, and look where it's gotten me. Clara looked at her sister, really looked at her for the first time since she'd burst through the door. Ruth looked older than her years, worn down by grief and guilt, and the hard miles between California and Wyoming. She looked like a woman who had lost everything and didn't know how to keep living. She looked like Clara had felt standing alone in the snow, watching the wagon train disappear. Where will you go? Clara asked. Ruth shrugged helplessly. I don't know. Back to California, I suppose. Try to find work. Try to survive. Alone. Thomas is all I have left. He's with the wagon waiting outside town. Thomas, Ruth's oldest son, who had been 10 when Clara last saw him. I couldn't bring him into this. Couldn't let him see what I'd done to you. Clara thought about the boy, the uncertainty he must be feeling, the loss he'd already endured. She thought about Ruth, flawed and frightened, and utterly alone. And she thought about Sam, who had told her just last night that the hardest thing in the world was learning to forgive. Stay, she heard herself say. Ruth's head snapped up. What? Stay. In Elk Creek, at least for a while. Clara took a breath, hardly believing the words coming out of her mouth. Mrs. McAllister might have room at the boarding house, and Thomas could join my class. Get some proper schooling. After everything I did, you'd let me stay. I'm not letting you do anything. I'm offering you a choice. Clara met her sister's eyes. You said you were afraid your whole life. Maybe it's time to stop being afraid. Maybe it's time to start making different choices. Ruth stared at her tears streaming down her face. Why? Why would you do this for me? Because you're my sister. Clara's voice broke on the word. Because no matter what you did, You're still my blood. And because I know what it feels like to be alone and desperate and scared. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Not even you." Ruth crossed the room and pulled Clara into a fierce embrace, sobbing against her shoulder. Clara held her, feeling the grief and anger and love all tangled together in her chest, impossible to separate. "I'm sorry," Ruth kept saying. "I'm so sorry." "I know," Clara whispered back. "I know you are." Sam found her an hour later, sitting alone in the empty church, her eyes red from crying. "Sheriff told me your sister showed up," he said, settling onto the pew beside her. "You all right?" "No." Clara leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Yes, I don't know. What happened?" Clara told him everything. Harold's death, the children, Ruth's apology, the offer she'd made. Sam listened without interrupting, his arm coming around her shoulders as she talked. "You invited her to stay," he said when she finished. "It wasn't a question." "Yes." "After what she did?" "Yes." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "That took courage. Or foolishness. Maybe both." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "You sure about this?" "No. But I couldn't just send her away. Not after everything." Clara looked up at him. "Does that make me weak?" "It makes you human." Sam's eyes were soft. "It makes you the woman I fell in love with." "You love me." The words were out before Clara could stop them. Sam had never said it before, not directly. He'd talked about wanting her, about needing her, about not being able to imagine his future without her. But he'd never said love. Sam's expression was unguarded in a way she'd never seen. "I've loved you since you told me you'd lost 2 babies and you understood. I've loved you since you held my hand in the dark and listened to me talk about Margaret. I've loved you since you looked me in the eye and told me not to run away." Clara felt tears spilling down her cheeks again, but these were different. These were tears of joy. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much it scares me." "Don't be scared." Sam cupped her face in his rough hands. "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever." He kissed her, then gentle and fierce at the same time, and Clara felt something settle into place inside her chest. A certainty that had been building for weeks finally coming into focus. This was where she belonged. Here, in this small town, with this man. This was home. When they finally broke apart, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. Clara blinked. "What?" "I know we said we'd take it slow. I know we agreed to court properly and give the town time to get used to us. But life's too short, Clara. We both know that better than most." He took her hands in his. "I don't want to waste another day pretending we're not sure about this. I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." "Sam? I can't give you a fancy house or a life of ease. I can't promise that things will always be perfect. But I can promise that I'll love you every day for the rest of my life. I can promise that I'll never leave you, never abandon you, never make you feel like you're not worth everything in the world." Clara was crying again, but she was also laughing, joy and disbelief mixing together in her chest. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Sam's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He pulled her close and held her tight, his heart beating strong and steady against her own. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you for giving me a reason to live again." Clara pulled back to look at his face, this man who had saved her life and then given it meaning. "Thank you for finding me," she said. "Thank you for not riding past." "I could never have ridden past you," Sam said. "Even if I'd wanted to. Something about you wouldn't let me." "What do you mean?" Sam shook his head, struggling to find the words. "When I saw you there in the snow, something inside me just knew. Knew that you were important. Knew that if I left you behind, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." He laughed softly. "Sounds crazy when I say it out loud." It doesn't sound crazy at all. Clara touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. It sounds like fate. I don't believe in fate. Maybe fate believes in you. They sat together in the quiet church as the light began to fade, making plans that neither of them would have dared to dream just weeks before. A wedding, a home, a life built on the foundations of their shared wounds and stubborn hope. It wasn't going to be easy. Clara knew that. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome, people who would never accept their unconventional love story. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara wasn't afraid of the future. She was running toward it. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Ruth and Thomas moved into Mrs. McAllister's boarding house, though the older woman made it clear that her hospitality was conditional on good behavior. Thomas, a solemn boy with his father's dark eyes, enrolled in Clara's class and proved to be a quick learner, hungry for knowledge after months on the trail. Sam began preparing his cabin for a wife, enlisting the help of Sheriff Brody and a few other men from town who had warmed to Clara despite the initial gossip. They added a second room, reinforced the roof against the spring storms that would come, built proper furniture to replace the rough-hewn pieces Sam had cobbled together over the years. Clara watched the transformation with wonder, hardly daring to believe it was real. "You're really doing this," Dorothy said one evening at the boarding house. "Getting married to the mountain man." "I really am. People are still talking, you know, saying it's too fast, saying you're making a mistake." Clara smiled. "Let them talk. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Dorothy studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Good for you. Most people never find what you've found. Don't let anyone take it from you." "I won't." The wedding was set for 3 weeks at a small ceremony at the church with just a handful of witnesses. Clara didn't want anything elaborate, and Sam would have been happy to marry her in the middle of the forest with only the trees as witnesses. But 2 days before the wedding, everything changed. Clara was walking back from the general store when she saw a group of men on horseback riding into town. They were rough-looking, armed, their faces hard with purpose. Something about them made Clara's blood run cold. She quickened her pace toward the boarding house, but she wasn't fast enough. One of the men spotted her and called out, "Hey, you the school teacher?" Clara kept walking. "I'm talking to you, woman." The man spurred his horse forward, cutting off her path. Up close, he was even more intimidating, with a jagged scar running down one cheek and eyes that held no warmth at all. "Looking for Sam Callahan," he said. "Heard he's got himself a woman now. That you—" Clara's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me." The man leaned down from his horse, his face inches from hers. "I can smell a liar from a mile away. Now where is he?" "Clara." Sam's voice cut across the street, sharp with fear and fury. Clara turned to see him striding toward them, his hand on the revolver at his hip. The scarred man straightened up, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Well, well, Sam Callahan. Been a long time." Sam stopped 10 feet away, his body coiled with tension. "Not long enough, Garrett." "Now that's not a very friendly greeting, after everything we've been through together." "We've been through nothing together. Not anymore." Clara looked between the two men, confusion and fear warring in her chest. "Sam, who is this?" "Someone from a long time ago," Sam said, his eyes never leaving the scarred man. "Someone who should have stayed in the past." Garrett laughed. "Is that what you told your pretty little school teacher, that you left us all behind?" He looked at Clara, his smile turning cruel. "Did he tell you what he really is? What he did during the war?" "I know about the war," Clara said. "He fought for the Union. He killed for the Union. Killed and burned and destroyed." Garrett's voice dripped with venom. "We rode together, him and me. Hunted down Confederate sympathizers like dogs. Burned their farms. Shot their sons." He gestured at his scarred face. "I got this saving his life. And how did he repay me? By testifying against me when the army decided our methods were too extreme." "That's enough," Sam said. "Is it?" Does she know you're the reason I spent 5 years in prison? Does she know you're the reason I lost everything? You lost everything because you murdered innocent people, women and children. I had nothing to do with that. You were there. You were part of it. And I've been paying for that every day since." Sam's voice was raw. "But I won't let you use my guilt to justify what you did." Garrett's hand moved toward his gun, and time seemed to slow down. Clara saw Sam's hand move too, saw the calculation in both men's eyes, saw the moment when everything was about to go wrong. "Stop!" she shouted, stepping between them. "Both of you stop." "Clara, get out of the way," Sam said. "No, I won't let you do this." She turned to face Garrett, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. "Whatever happened between you two, it was a long time ago. Whatever you think Sam owes you killing him won't give it to you." Garrett stared at her, something flickering in his hard eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know that vengeance is a poison that destroys the person who carries it. I know that whatever crime Sam committed, he's been punishing himself ever since. And I know that if you kill him, you'll spend the rest of your life running just like you've been running since you got out of prison." The street had gone quiet. Clara could feel the eyes of the entire town on her, watching, waiting. Garrett's hand hovered over his gun. For one terrible moment, Clara thought he was going to draw anyway. Then slowly he let his hand drop. "You've got spine, school teacher," he said. "I'll give you that." "Garrett?" Sam's voice was quieter now, less angry. "I'm sorry for what happened to you. I'm sorry for the parts I played. But it's over. Let it be over." Garrett looked at Sam for a long moment, something complicated moving behind his eyes. "It'll never be over," he said finally. "Not for me. But maybe—" He glanced at Clara, then back at Sam. "Maybe it doesn't have to end in blood." He turned his horse and rode away, his men following. Clara watched them go, her legs suddenly weak beneath her. Then Sam was there, his arms around her, holding her up. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice shaking. "He could have killed you. But he didn't. Clara, he didn't." She looked up at him, seeing the fear and love and guilt all tangled together in his face. "And now it's over." Sam held her tighter, his face buried in her hair. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do." Clara pulled back to look at him. "Whatever you did in the war, whatever mistakes you made, you've spent 10 years atoning for them. You've spent 10 years punishing yourself. It's time to stop." "I don't know how." "Then let me help you. Let me love you. Let me show you that you're worth more than your worst moments." Sam's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "How did I get so lucky?" "You found me in a snowstorm," Clara said, smiling through her own tears. "Everything else just followed from there." The night before the wedding, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed at the boarding house, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything that had happened since that terrible day in the snow. 3 months. It had been 3 months since Ruth had pushed her off the wagon. 3 months since Sam had appeared out of the blizzard and changed her life forever. It felt like 3 years. It felt like 3 minutes. A soft knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Clara." Ruth's voice hesitant. "Are you awake?" Clara rose and opened the door. Her sister stood in the hallway in her nightgown, her face pale in the moonlight filtering through the window. "I couldn't sleep either," Ruth said. "Can I come in?" Clara stepped aside, and Ruth entered, settling onto the edge of the bed while Clara took the chair by the window. "Tomorrow's the big day," Ruth said. "How do you feel?" "Terrified, happy, both at the same time." Ruth smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "I felt the same way the night before I married Harold." "Did you love him?" "Really love him, I mean." Ruth was quiet for a moment. "I thought I did. Or maybe I just wanted to so badly that I convinced myself it was true." She looked at her hands folded in her lap. "He wasn't a bad man, Clara. Not at first. But the years changed him. The disappointments, the failures. He became someone I didn't recognize. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choices. I have to live with them. Ruth met her eyes. But you've made different choices. Better ones. Sam isn't Harold. Anyone can see that. How can you be so sure? Because of the way he looks at you. Like you hung the moon and stars. Ruth's voice cracked slightly. Harold never looked at me like that. Not even in the beginning. Clara felt her throat tighten. Ruth, I want you to be happy, Ruth interrupted. I know I don't have any right to want that after what I did. But I do. I want you to have everything I never had. Everything I was too afraid to reach for. Clara crossed the room and sat beside her sister, taking Ruth's hands in hers. I forgave you, she said quietly. I meant it. Whatever happened between us, it's in the past. I know, but I haven't forgiven myself. I don't know if I ever will. Then let me help you, the way Sam is helping me. Clara squeezed her sister's hands. We've both made mistakes, Ruth. We've both been hurt, but we're still here. We still have a chance to do better. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. When did you become the wise one? Somewhere between freezing to death and falling in love. Clara smiled. It's been quite an education. They sat together in the quiet darkness, sisters bound by blood and betrayal, and something that might given time become trust again. Get some sleep, Ruth finally said, standing. You've got a big day tomorrow. So do you. You're standing up with me, remember? Ruth paused at the door, her expression soft with surprise. You still want me there? You're my sister. Where else would you be? Ruth nodded, blinking back tears. Thank you, Clara, for everything. After she left, Clara lay back down and closed her eyes. This time sleep came easily. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold. Clara dressed with trembling hands, helped by Dorothy and old Bess, who fussed over her hair and dress with the enthusiasm of women who rarely got to attend such occasions. You look beautiful, Dorothy said, stepping back to admire her work. Sam's going to fall over when he sees you. He better not, old Bess cackled. We don't want the groom unconscious at the altar. Clara laughed, but her nerves were jangling. In less than an hour, she would be Mrs. Samuel Callahan. In less than an hour, her entire life would change again. Mrs. McAllister appeared in the doorway, her expression as stern as ever, but with a warmth in her eyes that hadn't been there when Clara first arrived. The minister's ready, she said. And there's someone here to see you. Clara's heart stuttered. Sam, he's not supposed to see me before. It's not Sam. Mrs. McAllister stepped aside, revealing a small figure behind her. Thomas, Ruth's son, stood in the hallway clutching something in his hands. He looked uncomfortable in his Sunday clothes, his dark hair slicked back with water, his young face solemn. Thomas, Clara said, surprised. What is it? The boy stepped forward, holding out his hands. In them was a small bouquet of winter flowers, their petals bright against the gray February day. Ma said you needed something to carry, he said, his voice gruff with embarrassment. I picked these this morning, from the meadow south of town. Clara took the flowers, her eyes stinging. Thomas, they're beautiful. They're just flowers. But the boy's cheeks flushed with pleasure at her reaction. They're perfect. Clara bent and kissed his forehead. Thank you. Thomas ducked his head embarrassed and fled down the hall. But Clara caught the small smile on his face before he disappeared. That boy's come a long way, Mrs. McAllister observed. 3 months ago he wouldn't speak to anyone. Now look at him. He just needed someone to believe in him, Clara said. Seems to be a pattern around here. Mrs. McAllister's expression softened. Ready? Clara took a deep breath. Ready. The walk to the church felt both endless and impossibly short. Clara moved through the snow-dusted streets of Elk Creek, flanked by the women who had become her unexpected family. Ruth walked beside her, their arms linked, their breath misting in the cold air. Mrs. McAllister led the way, her back straight and her step firm. Dorothy and Old Bess followed behind, whispering and giggling like young girls. The townspeople had gathered along the route despite the cold. Some nodded in greeting. Others called out congratulations. Even Mrs. Patterson, who had been Clara's harshest critic, offered a small wave as they passed. "Word got around about what you did," Dorothy whispered. "Standing up to those outlaws. People respect that." "I just did what needed to be done." "That's what makes it impressive." They reached the church, and Clara's heart began to pound. Through the open doors, she could see the small congregation gathered inside. Sheriff Brody and his wife, Mayor Wilson and his family, Henry Porter from the general store, a handful of others who had welcomed her into their community despite the gossip and doubt. And there at the front of the church stood Sam. He was dressed in a new suit, his hair combed, his beard neatly trimmed. He looked so different from the rough mountain man who had found her in the snow that Clara almost didn't recognize him. But then he turned, and his eyes met hers, and she saw it, that look Ruth had described, like she hung the moon and stars. "Go on," Mrs. McAllister said, giving her a gentle push. "He's waiting." Clara walked up the aisle alone. She had no father to give her away, no family except the sister who walked behind her. But she didn't feel alone. She felt surrounded by love, buoyed by the impossible luck that had brought her to this moment. Sam reached out and took her hands as she reached the altar. His fingers were trembling, she realized. This strong, steady man, who had faced down outlaws and survived a war, was trembling because of her. "You came," he said, his voice rough. "Did you think I wouldn't? I was afraid I'd wake up and this would all be a dream." "It's not a dream." Clara squeezed his hands. "It's real. I'm real. And I'm not going anywhere." The minister cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was simple, the words familiar, but Clara heard them as if for the first time. "Do you take this man to be your husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do," Clara said, and her voice didn't waver. "Do you take this woman to be your wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do." Sam's voice broke on the words, and Clara saw tears shining in his eyes. "I do." The minister smiled. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Sam cupped Clara's face in his hands, his touch gentle, reverent. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." And then he kissed her, and the church erupted in cheers, and Clara felt her heart overflow with a joy so profound it almost hurt. She was married. She was home. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The celebration afterward was modest by city standards, but lavish by Elk Creek's. Mrs. Wilson from the hotel had prepared a wedding feast, and the entire town seemed to have contributed something. There was roast beef and fresh bread, apple pie and spiced cider, a small cake decorated with winter berries that Mrs. McAllister had baked herself. Clara sat beside Sam at the head table, her hand never leaving his, accepting congratulations and well wishes from an endless stream of guests. "I never thought I'd see this day," Sheriff Brody said, clapping Sam on the shoulder. "You of all people married, and to such a fine woman." He winked at Clara. "You've got your work cut out for you, Mrs. Callahan. This one's stubborn as a mule." "I'm aware," Clara laughed, "but I'm stubborn too." "Then you'll be just fine." As the evening wore on, the music started. Fiddle and guitar played by two of the local ranchers who fancied themselves musicians. Couples took to the small dance floor that had been cleared in the corner of the room. Sam stood and offered Clara his hand. "Dance with me." "I didn't know you could dance." "I can't, but I'm willing to try if you are." Clara took his hand and let him lead her to the floor. They swayed together awkwardly at first, neither quite sure of the steps, but soon they found their rhythm moving together like they'd been doing it all their lives. "Happy?" Sam asked. "More than I ever thought possible." "Good." He pulled her closer, his arms tight around her waist. "Because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure it stays that way." Clara rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, leather and pine, and something uniquely Sam. "I still can't believe this is real." "Neither can I." His voice was low, meant only for her. 3 months ago, I was living alone in a cabin, talking to myself, convinced I'd never feel anything again. And now? He shook his head. Now I have everything I ever wanted. Everything I was afraid to want. Afraid? Wanting things means you can lose them. I learned that the hard way. Sam pulled back to look at her. But you taught me something else. You taught me that not wanting things doesn't protect you. It just makes you lonely. Sam. Thank you, he said, his voice cracking, for saving me. Clara reached up and touched his face. You saved me first. Did I? Sometimes I think it was the other way around. The music changed to something slower, sweeter. Clara let herself sink into Sam's arms, let the world fall away, until there was nothing but the two of them, moving together in the warm glow of the lanterns. I want to show you something, Sam said suddenly. Now. It's important. He took her hand and led her toward the door, pausing only to grab their coats from the hook by the entrance. The cold hit Clara like a wall as they stepped outside, but Sam's hand was warm in hers, and his presence beside her made the chill bearable. Where are we going? Not far, just up the hill. They walked in silence through the snow, their breath misting in the moonlight. The sounds of the celebration faded behind them as they climbed, replaced by the quiet hush of a winter night. At the top of the hill, Sam stopped. Clara looked out over the valley below, silver and black in the moonlight, and caught her breath. This is where I buried them, Sam said quietly. Margaret and the baby. Right here under this tree. Clara's heart clenched. Oh, Sam. I come here sometimes, to talk to them, to remember. He turned to face her, his expression vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. I wanted you to know about this place. I wanted you to know that they existed, that they mattered. Of course they mattered. Some people would be jealous, would want me to forget them, to pretend they never happened. I'm not some people. Clara stepped closer, taking both his hands. Margaret was your wife. She gave you a child. She was part of your life, and that makes her part of mine too. I don't want you to forget her. I don't want you to pretend she didn't exist. Sam's eyes glistened with tears. She would have liked you, I think. The two of you were very different. But she would have seen your strength, your kindness. She would have been glad I found you. I hope so. I know so. Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A locket Clara saw tarnished with age. This was hers. I want you to have it. Sam, I couldn't. Please. He pressed it into her hands. It's not a replacement for her. Nothing could be. But it's a way of connecting the two parts of my life. The part before and the part after. You're my after, Clara. You're my future. But I need you to understand my past too. Clara opened the locket with trembling fingers. Inside was a small portrait, faded but still visible. A young woman with dark hair and gentle eyes, her face soft with what might have been love or hope or simply youth. She was beautiful, Clara said. She was. But so are you. In a different way. A way that's all your own. Clara closed the locket and pressed it to her heart. I'll treasure this, always. I know you will. They stood together on the hilltop, looking out over the valley where Margaret and her baby lay beneath the snow. Clara felt no jealousy, no resentment. Only gratitude for the woman who had loved Sam first, who had given him memories worth keeping, who had made him the man he was today. "Thank you," she said, "for trusting me with this. Thank you for understanding." They walked back down the hill, hand in hand, returning to the warmth and light of the celebration. But something had shifted between them. Something had deepened. They were no longer just two people who had found each other in a blizzard. They were partners, bound by more than love, bound by the understanding that comes from sharing your deepest wounds. The party wound down as midnight approached. Clara found Ruth in the corner of the room, watching the festivities, with an expression that Clara couldn't quite read. "You're leaving tomorrow," Clara said, settling beside her. "Back to California. Thomas and I need to start over somewhere." Ruth paused. "Unless—" "Unless what?" "Unless you think we should stay." Ruth's voice was hesitant. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I've done nothing to earn a place here. But Thomas is happy in your school. He's learning. He's making friends. And I—" She trailed off. "You— what?" "I'm tired of running." Ruth met her eyes. "I'm tired of starting over in new places where no one knows me, where I have to pretend to be someone I'm not. Here people know what I did. They know the worst of me. And somehow that feels more honest than pretending to be perfect somewhere else." Clara considered her sister seeing her perhaps for the first time. Not as the resentful woman who had made her childhood difficult, not as the bitter sister who had left her to die, but as a flawed human being struggling to find her way. "Stay," Clara said. "Really, really, Elk Creek needs good people. And despite everything, Ruth, you are a good person. You just forgot that for a while." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll try. That's all any of us can do." Ruth nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'll try. I promise." Clara hugged her sister, feeling something that had been broken finally begin to mend. When Clara and Sam finally left the celebration, the moon was high and the streets were quiet. Sam lifted her into the wagon he'd borrowed for the occasion, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. The horse moved forward, carrying them away from the lights of town and toward the cabin that would now be their home. "Mrs. Callahan," Sam said, testing the name. "I like the sound of that." "So do I." Clara leaned against his shoulder, exhaustion and happiness mixing together in her chest. "It's been quite a day. Quite a few months, actually." "Yes," Clara smiled. "Quite a few months." The cabin appeared ahead of them, warm light glowing in the windows. Sam had left a fire burning, Clara realized, and lanterns lit. He'd wanted her to come home to warmth and welcome, not darkness and cold. "I have one more surprise," Sam said as they pulled up to the door. "Sam, you've done enough. Just one more." He helped her down from the wagon, then led her to the door. "Close your eyes." Clara obeyed, letting him guide her inside. She felt warmth on her face, smelled wood smoke, and something else, something floral. "Open them." Clara opened her eyes and gasped. The cabin had been transformed. Every surface was covered with winter flowers, the same kind Thomas had picked for her bouquet. Candles burned on every shelf and table, filling the space with soft, flickering light. And in the center of the room, where Sam's rough table had been, stood a proper dining set, clearly new, with two chairs facing each other across a white tablecloth. "How did you—" "I had help." Sam's voice was gruff with embarrassment. "Mrs. McAllister, Dorothy, even old Bess, believe it or not. They came out here while we were at the celebration, set everything up." Clara felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's beautiful." "You're beautiful." Sam stepped closer, taking her hands. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I still can't believe you're mine." "I've always been yours," Clara said. "From the moment you found me in the snow. I just didn't know it yet." Sam kissed her, then slowly, deeply, with all the promise of the life they would build together. Clara melted into him, letting go of everything, the fear, the doubt, the memories of pain. There was only Sam, only this moment, only the beginning of forever. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "Welcome home, Clara Callahan." "Home," Clara repeated, tasting the word. "I like the sound of that." "So do I." Sam smiled, that rare full smile that she'd come to treasure. "So do I." Outside, the wind picked up, sending snow swirling against the windows. But inside the cabin, there was only warmth, only light, only the quiet joy of two people who had found each other against impossible odds. Clara thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The wagon train, the betrayal, the blizzard, the stranger on horseback who had said, "You're coming with me." Every moment of pain had led to this. Every loss, every fear, every moment of despair. It had all been necessary, all been part of the path that brought her here, to this cabin, to this man, to this life that she never could have imagined. And for the first time, Clara understood that her story wasn't about being abandoned at all. It was about being found. Spring came slowly to Wyoming that year. Clara watched the snow recede day by day, revealing the land beneath brown and muddy, but full of promise. Each morning she woke in Sam's arms, still marveling at the miracle of it, still half expecting to open her eyes and find herself back in that frozen wasteland, alone and dying. But each morning Sam was there, solid, real, hers. "You're staring at me again," he mumbled one morning, his eyes still closed. "I like staring at you. It's unsettling. You'll get used to it." Sam opened one eye, a smile tugging at his lips. "Will I?" "You don't have a choice." Clara leaned over and kissed him. "You're stuck with me now." "Worst thing that ever happened to me," Sam said, but he was grinning as he pulled her closer. Their life together settled into a rhythm that Clara had never known before. Sam rose early to check his trap lines and tend to the animals. Clara walked to town each day for her teaching duties, returning in the afternoon to find Sam already home, chopping wood or mending fences, or simply waiting for her on the porch. "How were the children today?" he would ask. "Exhausting. Wonderful." Thomas read an entire chapter aloud without stumbling. "Ruth's boy." "The quiet one." "He's not so quiet anymore." Clara smiled. "He's got opinions about everything. Reminds me of someone." "I have no idea who you mean." They would eat supper together, talking about their days, about their plans, about nothing at all. And in the evenings they would sit by the fire, Clara reading aloud while Sam worked on some project or another, a new chair, a set of shelves, a cradle that neither of them mentioned directly, but both understood the meaning of. It was ordinary, it was peaceful, it was everything Clara had never dared to hope for. But not everything was perfect. Some nights, Sam still woke screaming, caught in the grip of nightmares that no amount of love could chase away. Clara would hold him through the worst of it, whispering soothing words, until his breathing steadied and his trembling stopped. "I'm sorry," he would say afterward every time. "I'm sorry you have to see me like this." "Don't apologize, not ever. It's been 15 years. You'd think I'd be over it by now." "Some things you don't get over," Clara said. "You just learn to carry them differently." Sam looked at her, his eyes dark with old pain. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. I just say what's true." The nightmares didn't stop entirely, but they became less frequent as the weeks passed. Sam began to sleep through the night more often than not, his body finally learning that it was safe, that he was home, that he didn't have to keep watch anymore. Clara noticed other changes too. The way he smiled more easily. The way he laughed, a full, genuine sound that she treasured every time she heard it. The way he touched her, not just with passion, but with tenderness, with reverence, with something that looked like gratitude. "I never thought I'd have this," he told her one night, his voice soft in the darkness. "A home. A wife. A reason to wake up in the morning. What did you think you'd have? Nothing. Just more years of the same. Surviving without living. He turned to face her. You changed everything, Clara. Everything. You changed me too. How? Clara thought about the question. Before you found me, I thought I knew what I was worth, which was nothing. My aunt and uncle made that clear. My sister made it clear. Even Thomas in his own way made it clear when he died and left me alone. That's not fair. He didn't choose to die. I know, but grief isn't fair. It doesn't follow the rules. Clara took a breath. The point is, I believed I was worthless. I believed I deserved to be left behind. And then you came along and looked at me like I was something precious, something worth saving. You are precious. You are worth saving. I know that now, because of you. Sam kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. We saved each other, he said. That's what matters. In late April, Clara realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a week or two, but she hadn't dared to say anything, hadn't dared to hope. After losing 2 babies before they were ever born, hope felt like a dangerous thing. But when she finally told Sam, his reaction swept away all her fears. A baby. His voice cracked on the word. You're sure? As sure as I can be. Sam's face transformed. The guarded wariness that had been his default expression for so long simply vanished, replaced by a joy so pure and overwhelming that Clara felt tears spring to her eyes. A baby. He repeated, wonder in his voice. Our baby. Our baby. He knelt before her, pressing his hands gently to her still flat stomach. Hello in there, he whispered. I'm your father. I know I'm probably not what you're expecting. I'm rough around the edges. I don't know much about being a parent, but I promise you this. His voice broke. I promise I will love you with everything I have. I will protect you. I will be there for you every day for the rest of my life. Clara ran her fingers through his hair, her heart so full it ached. You're going to be a wonderful father, Sam. You really think so? I know so. He looked up at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm scared, Clara. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose you both, like I lost? Don't. Clara knelt down to face him. Don't go there. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we can't live in fear of what might happen. We have to live in hope of what could be. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. Clara smiled. A stubborn mountain man who taught me that surviving isn't enough. You have to actually live. Sam pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I love you, he said. I love you so much it terrifies me. Love is supposed to be terrifying. It's supposed to be bigger than you can handle. That's how you know it's real. The news spread quickly through Elk Creek. Mrs. McAllister was the first to know after Clara nearly fainted during a visit to the boarding house. The older woman took one look at her, demanded to know when her last monthly had been, and then surprised Clara by bursting into tears. Mrs. McAllister, are you all right? I'm fine, child. She wiped her eyes. I'm just happy for you. You deserve this, after everything. Thank you. Now sit down and let me make you some tea. You need to rest more. Growing a baby is hard work. Ruth's reaction was more complicated. Clara found her sister in the kitchen of the boarding house, scrubbing pots with unnecessary vigor. Her face was pale, her movements jerky. You heard, Clara said. Everyone's heard. Ruth didn't look up from her scrubbing. Congratulations. Ruth, look at me. Ruth set down the pot and turned her expression carefully neutral. But Clara could see the pain underneath the barely hidden grief. I'm happy for you, Ruth said. Truly, I am. But nothing. Ruth, her sister's composure cracked. I lost 3 children, Clara. 3. And here you are getting everything you ever wanted while I... She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. Clara crossed the kitchen and pulled her sister into a hug. I know it's not fair. I know it hurts to see me happy when you've lost so much. I don't begrudge you your happiness. I don't. It's just hard. So hard. Ruth was crying now, her body shaking with sobs. I wanted more children. After the 3 I lost, I wanted to try again. But Harold said we couldn't afford it. Said we had enough mouths to feed. And now he's gone and they're gone and I'll never... You don't know that. I'm 35, Clara. Who's going to want a 35-year-old widow with a half-grown son? Someone who sees your worth. Someone who looks past your age and your circumstances and sees the woman you are. That's a fairy tale. So was a mountain man saving a frozen woman from a blizzard. And look how that turned out. Ruth laughed through her tears. You're impossible, you know that. I learned from you. They held each other in the kitchen, 2 sisters who had hurt each other deeply, but were learning slowly to heal. I want you to be the godmother, Clara said. When the baby comes. Will you? Ruth pulled back her eyes wide. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. After everything I did, after I left you to die. Because of everything we've survived. Because you're my sister. Because no matter what happened between us, we're family. Real family. The kind you choose. Ruth's face crumpled. I don't deserve this. Maybe not, but I'm offering it anyway. Clara took her sister's hands. We can't change the past, Ruth. We can only choose what we do with the future. I choose to forgive. I choose to move forward. Will you choose that too? Ruth was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Yes, she whispered. I choose that too. The summer was the happiest of Clara's life. Her belly grew round and full. Sam became increasingly protective, insisting she rest more work, less let him handle the heavy chores. Clara found his hovering both annoying and endearing. I'm pregnant, not dying, she told him after he tried to carry her up the porch steps for the 3rd time that week. I know. I just want to help. Then help by trusting me to know my own limits. Sam's expression was mulish. What if something happens? What if nothing happens? What if everything is fine? Clara cupped his face in her hands. Sam, I know you're scared. I know you lost Margaret during childbirth, but I'm not Margaret. This isn't the same. I know that. Do you? Because every time I so much as cough, you look like you're about to fall apart. Sam's jaw tightened. I can't lose you. I can't. You won't. You don't know that. You can't promise that. No, I can't. But I can promise to do everything in my power to stay safe, to take care of myself, to let you help when I need it. Clara softened her voice. Can that be enough? Sam was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, the tension drained from his shoulders. It'll have to be, he said, because I don't have any other choice. You always have a choice. You're choosing to trust me, to trust us. That's all any of us can do. Sam pulled her close, his arms gentle around her swollen belly. I don't know how to do this. How to be a father. How to be the man you need me to be. You already are the man I need. You just don't see it yet. The baby came in late October, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Clara was at the cabin when the pain started Sam out checking his trap lines. She tried not to panic as the contractions grew stronger, more frequent. She tried to remember everything Mrs. McAllister had told her about childbirth, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of it. The pain that felt like being torn apart from the inside. The fear that something was wrong, that she would die here alone, that the baby would die with her. She managed to get to the door to wave down a passing rider who happened to be Sheriff Brody on his rounds. Sam, she gasped. Get Sam. Everything after that was a blur. She remembered being carried back inside. Remembered Mrs. McAllister arriving, her face grim but calm. Remembered Ruth holding her hand, telling her to breathe, telling her to push. Remembered the pain, endless waves of it, and the desperate need to make it stop. And then finally, Sam was there. He burst through the door, wild-eyed and terrified, snow still clinging to his coat. "Clara, Clara, I'm here." Sam. His name was all she could manage. He knelt beside her, taking her hand, his grip almost painfully tight. "I'm not leaving. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "I'm scared." "I know. Me too." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But you can do this. You're the strongest person I've ever known. You survived a blizzard. You survived being abandoned. You can survive this." Another contraction hit, and Clara screamed. "Push!" Mrs. McAllister commanded. "Push, Clara. The baby's coming." Clara pushed. Pushed through the pain, the fear, the exhaustion. Pushed with everything she had left. And then finally, a cry. Not her own cry. A baby's cry. "It's a girl," Mrs. McAllister announced, her voice thick with emotion. "A healthy baby girl." Clara collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. "A girl. Is she all right? Is she?" "She's perfect." Mrs. McAllister placed the tiny squalling bundle in Clara's arms. "Absolutely perfect." Clara looked down at her daughter, at the scrunched red face, and tiny fists, and impossibly small fingers. Her daughter. Hers and Sam's. "Sam," she whispered. "Look." Sam was crying. Openly, unashamedly crying, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice broken. "She looks like you. She has your eyes." "Does she?" Sam reached out one finger, touching the baby's cheek with infinite gentleness. "Hello, little one. I'm your father." The baby's cries quieted, and for just a moment she seemed to look at Sam with her unfocused newborn eyes. "She knows you," Clara said. "She does." "Of course. She's been listening to your voice for months. She knows her daddy." Sam made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Her daddy. I'm her daddy." "You are, and you're going to be the best daddy she's ever had." "I'm going to be the only daddy she's ever had." "Then you better make it count." Sam leaned down and kissed Clara's forehead, then the baby's. "I will. I promise." They named her Margaret Rose Callahan. Margaret for the wife Sam had lost. Rose for Clara's mother, who had taught her that education could set you free. A name that honored the past while looking toward the future. "Are you sure?" Sam asked when Clara suggested it. "About Margaret, I mean." "I'm sure. She was part of your life. Part of who you are. It's only right that she be part of our daughter's life too." "Most women wouldn't want their child named after their husband's dead wife." "I'm not most women." "No." Sam's smile was soft. "You certainly are not." Little Margaret, they called her. Maggie for short. She had Sam's dark hair and Clara's stubborn chin, and she wrapped both her parents around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. The first months were exhausting. Sleepless nights and endless feedings, dirty diapers and colicky crying. Clara had never been so tired in her life, but she had also never been so happy. "I didn't know," she told Sam one night, rocking Maggie in the chair he'd made. "I didn't know it would feel like this." "Like what?" "Like my heart is outside my body. Like I would die to protect her. Like everything that came before was just leading to this moment." Sam sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "I feel the same way. About both of you. Even when she wakes us up at 3 in the morning. Especially then." Sam smiled. "Those are the moments I remember best. The dark hours when it's just the three of us and the rest of the world doesn't exist." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Sam Callahan." "I love you too, Clara Callahan." Maggie gurgled in Clara's arms, as if adding her own contribution to the conversation. "And we love you," Clara told her. "More than you'll ever know." The seasons turned. Maggie grew from a tiny helpless infant into a crawling, babbling tornado of curiosity and energy. She took her first steps on her first birthday, lurching across the cabin floor into Sam's waiting arms. She said her first word a month later, a clear, triumphant, "Mama," that made Clara cry for an hour. Clara's school expanded as more families moved to Elk Creek. She hired an assistant, a young woman from Denver, who had heard about the frontier teacher who welcomed all children regardless of background or circumstance. Ruth helped with the administrative tasks, finding a purpose that gave her life meaning again. Sam took on more work as a guide leading settlers safely through the mountain passes, sharing the knowledge that had kept him alive for so many years. He was still quiet, still preferred solitude to crowds, but he no longer flinched away from human connection. "You're different," Sheriff Brody observed one evening. "Not sure I can put my finger on how, but you're different." "I have reasons to be different now." "That you do." Brody clapped him on the shoulder. "It's good to see Sam. It's really good to see." On their 5th wedding anniversary, Sam took Clara back to the hilltop where Margaret and the baby were buried. It was the first time Clara had been there since their wedding night. She had offered to come before, but Sam always said he needed to go alone. She understood. Some grief was too private to share. But today was different. They stood together before the 2 simple markers, hand in hand, while Maggie played with wildflowers a few feet away. "I brought them," Sam said, his voice rough. "Brought who?" "Margaret. The baby. I brought them to meet you. And Maggie." He swallowed hard. "I know that sounds crazy." "It doesn't sound crazy at all." Sam knelt beside the graves, his hand resting on the weathered stone. "Margaret," he said quietly, "I want you to meet someone. This is Clara, my wife. And that little one over there, that's Maggie. Margaret Rose Callahan, named after you." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. "I still miss you," Sam continued. "I'll always miss you, but I'm not broken anymore. Clara put me back together. Maggie gave me something to live for." His voice cracked. "I hope you're at peace. I hope you know that I never forgot you, that I never will forget you." He stood wiping his eyes and Clara stepped forward. "Thank you," she said to the graves. "Thank you for loving him first. Thank you for giving him the capacity to love me. I promise I'll take care of him. I promise I'll make sure he knows every day how much he deserves to be happy." Sam's hand found hers, squeezing tight. They stood there together as the sun began to set. 3 generations of love intertwined past and present and future, meeting on a hilltop in Wyoming. "Mama, Daddy, look." They turned to see Maggie holding up a handful of flowers, her face bright with pride. "For you," she said, toddling toward them. "Pretty flowers." Clara bent down and scooped her daughter into her arms. "They're beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you." Maggie beamed, then pointed at the grave markers. "Who dat?" Clara looked at Sam, who nodded. "That's Margaret," Clara said. "She was someone your daddy loved very much a long time ago. Like Daddy loves Maggie." "Yes, sweetie, just like that." Maggie considered this information with the solemnity only a child could muster. Then she wriggled out of Clara's arms, toddled over to the graves, and carefully placed her flowers on the larger stone. "Pretty flowers for Margaret," she announced. "So she not sad." Sam made a choked sound, and Clara saw tears streaming down his face. She went to him, wrapping her arms around him while he cried. "She's perfect," he managed. "She's absolutely perfect." "She is," Clara agreed, "just like her father." That night, after Maggie was asleep, Clara and Sam sat on the porch of their cabin watching the stars emerge one by one. "I was thinking," Sam said. "About what?" "About that day. The day I found you in the snow." "What about it?" Sam was quiet for a moment. "I almost didn't stop. Did you know that—" Clara turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I saw you from a distance, saw the wagon train was gone, saw you kneeling there alone. And my first instinct was to ride past, to not get involved, to stay safe in my isolation. But you didn't. No. Something made me stop. Something I couldn't explain then and still can't explain now. Sam took her hand. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was God. Maybe it was just dumb luck. But whatever it was, I'm grateful for it every single day. So am I. I think about what would have happened if I hadn't stopped. If I'd just ridden past like my instincts told me to. Sam's voice was thick. You would have died. Maggie would never have been born. I would have spent the rest of my life alone in that cabin, dying slowly without ever really living. But that's not what happened. No, it's not. Sam turned to face her, his eyes bright in the moonlight. You saved me, Clara. I know I'm the one who pulled you out of the snow. I know I'm the one who brought you to town. But you're the one who saved me. You gave me a reason to keep going, a reason to believe that life could be good again. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. You saved me too, in every way that matters. Then I guess we're even. I guess we are. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. From inside the cabin they could hear the soft sounds of Maggie sleeping the peaceful rhythm of a child secure in her parents' love. Sam. Yeah. Thank you for not riding past. Sam pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. Thank you for being worth stopping for. Clara leaned into his warmth, into the solid certainty of his presence. 5 years ago, she had been abandoned in a snowstorm, left to die by her own blood. Now she had a husband who adored her, a daughter who filled her life with joy, a community that respected her, and a sister who was slowly becoming a friend again. She had found home, not a place, but a person, a family, a life built on the ashes of everything she had lost. And she knew with absolute certainty that it was only the beginning. Clara thought about the woman she had been that day in the snow, kneeling in despair, certain that her life was over. She thought about all the moments of fear and doubt, the times she had wondered if she was making a mistake, if she was worthy of the love she had found. She thought about Ruth still healing, but finally free of the bitterness that had poisoned her for so long. About Thomas, now 15, and planning to become a teacher himself. About Mrs. McAllister and Dorothy, and all the others who had welcomed her when she had nothing to offer but herself. And she thought about Sam. Her Sam. The mountain man who had ridden out of a blizzard and changed her life forever. I love you. She said the words, feeling new even after 5 years. I love you too. Forever. Sam smiled, that rare, full smile that still made her heart skip. Forever. Clara rested her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes, letting the peace of the moment wash over her. She had been left behind to die abandoned by her own blood in the cruelest possible way. But she had not died. She had risen. She had loved. She had built a life beyond anything she had ever dreamed possible. And in the end, being left behind was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Because it led her straight into the arms of forever.